guys, and welcome back to Gura. Now, okay, I'm gonna be completely honest with y'all. I wanted this episode out at the beginning of Christmas break so I can have it done at like during the middle of Christmas break so I have more time to work on other projects like Compolas and stuff. But you know, that did not happen, and you just right around the end of Christmas break. And I'm now just getting it out, and I'm a little mad about that. But you know, at least I'm getting it out this time, right? Now, Gura is an alien world, as you know, so I don't want to waste any time because this episode is probably going to be a long one, similar to the one I had on Thanksgiving. So, you know, okay, I'm gonna be completely honest with y'all guys. Y'all see my little look here? This little cartoon avatar thing? It doesn't really look good, you know? Like, I can do way better than this. This was back in my early days of art. I can do way better than this, you know? Okay, you know what? I prefer this look a lot better than the last one. I actually put a bit more detail into this one, and I actually got it to the right hairstyle and color. Because my hair is actually not that bright blonde. That's almost a yellow color. It's more like this. It's also around the same color and style, you know. So, when we were last on Gura, we were talking about the early creatures that came up on land. And in this episode, of course, we're going to be talking about how they have diversified, over through the continents and stuff. Which is going to be a rapid evolution and such, which can be quite exciting into multiple different types. This period is sort of like the Carboniferous, with vast swamps and jungles, and high levels of oxygen. So, it is going to be a very, very prominent time for diversity among many species. And it's going to sort of kick off the creatures on land. So, that is gonna be quite nice. And as you can see now, the maps have changed a bit. The Arctics are gradually growing as the planet is cooling a bit. However, plants, of course, have now taken over the land and have diversified into vast swamp jungles and open arid plains. And, well, it's quite vast, and now you can see it from space, of purple land. Because Gura is full of purple plants. Unlike Earth, which of course has green plants. Now, okay. What are some things like that? Okay. Why are the rivers growing? It's because of tectonic plates and such, you know? And the continents, although it might not look it, are actually moving. Laura is moving towards Terra, and Terra is moving towards Terra, and North Laura, it's moving up towards the top of the ice-like caps. And yeah, soon they may collide eventually, all forming a supercontinent, but you know, who knows? So yeah, the regional continents are quite nice. Starting off within the swampy jungles, the first large plant that we're going to be discussing here. Titania purpura is the tallest plant so far in Gura, reaching a very tall height. These giant plants have multiple branches in order to collect gametes and form them into spores. So these things still reproduce via spores, which is crazy. These plants have large roots that dangle into the dirt, kind of like a large mangrove. However, they're a lot larger than most mangroves out there, and have developed broad, large leaves. Of course, these creatures are descended from the purple arbora, which purple arbora still exists in patches along these patches of forests, which is quite nice for the purple arbora. They could be considered entire ecosystems on their own, just because of how big they are. So, they could have many types of creatures that live in them and thrive in them. By the way, my voice may sound a little different. It's because I think it's a bit sick or something, or my voice is just changing. I'm not too sure, but it's acting up really. But like I said, these are very tall trees, and they're quite nice. So, nice. Now, dwelling on the ground, another plant descendant of the purple heart lily has been diversifying. Now, this is the Crinaeris. I don't know how to pronounce that. But it's no longer really a plant, as it doesn't photosynthesize anymore. Instead, it derives its nutritional value from decaying matter, such as decaying plant matter and such. Which is interesting, because these sort of make them not really a plant anymore. Instead, it makes them resemble mushrooms or fungi. Especially with their roots, which can result into strange mycelium networks. This can also connect to the Titania purpa, which allows them to communicate with other Titania purpa. So it's sort of like fungus here on Earth. And yeah, like I say, they can grow in vast little colonies on dead matter. And these large stems, the two sacs, which were originally the leaves of the purple heart lily, are now little sacs that they use to pop and explode into spores, and which can travel vast distances in order to populate. So these can be found on Laura, North Laura, Maritera, and Longaterra, so basically everywhere. And like I said, they grow in decaying matter, so if you find a rotting carcass of a plant or animal, you can find these growing on it. So Gura now officially has fungi growing on its surface of the dirt. Maybe some varieties could become aquatic. Who knows? So, we have beautiful, beautiful plants. However, another descendant of the purple heart lily does not take the fungus route. Instead, it is developed, well, it stayed a plant. This is the Cotis purpureus. This plant is quite cool, if you will, because while it is very small, it is the smallest plant on Gura so far, it is, it's not like what you expect. See, that these join in vast colonies similar to the fungus, but it forms sort of a moss mat. That's right, Gura now has moss. This moss has developed these tiny little leaves, and it makes it very fuzzy. These can grow on rocks and other plants as well. And sometimes they can even form vast mats. These mats can stretch up to miles. That is right, miles. Matter of fact, these can form into Cotinus purpureus plains. And these sort of plains, so these plants can act like moss, but they can also act like grass. Just depends on how much territory they occupy, spreading their roots around and reproducing via spores. So yeah, vast mats of moss, which is pretty cool because eventually all speculative projects need to have some form of moss, right? So yes, purple moss grows across Gura in vast groups and patches that can form into large open plains. Another plant type is the Spiculatum mortis. The Spiculatum mortis is another type of is a type of carnivorous plant. Their descendants originally had bristling like leaves and such, but now they have adapted into sort of thorns and such. These sharp thorns can penetrate the flesh of the creatures that they wrap around and kill them. And similarly, they have developed the same sort of tuber-like thing as well. Now, well, the tops have developed into thorns and such, and stuff like that. But yeah, they have the sharp thorns that can penetrate soft-bodied species and even armored species, so it's not pleasant. Now, like I said, their ancestors had a fleshy tuber bulb that they used to store nutrients from their kills and the nutrients from the ground. And it's pretty crazy when what they done to their tubers. Their tubers have also developed these spikes That means any burrowing creatures attempting to feed off of it will be deterred by these sharp, prickly spines. They're almost like cactuses, except they're carnivorous. So, these are not pleasant plants to be around, as you can get eaten by these long leaves, and when you try to kill it by killing its tuber, you can't, because of its sharp armor. So yeah, you have these very prickly creatures, or plants, because they're plants, not creatures. Well, I mean, they could be, well, we'll see in the future. But yes, the Speculum mortis, it's thriving by consuming all of the creatures and nutrients it gets, thus forming vast pocket forests and swamps near the stuff. And these beautiful forests are mainly made up of pockets, dwelling and thriving. But wait a second, what's these strange plants over here that have the colorful leaves? What are those? Oh, that's right. They're this. This is the Pucllaria folium. The Pucllaria folium is a very beautiful plant. And these plants are basically flowers. Now, these plants have developed bright, colorful leaves that act like petals on the base of some of the, like the stems. And of course, these plants are descended from the Purple arbora, except now they're very small, almost like shrubs. But these branches have developed flowers. These flowers attract pollinators, and they have developed coats of pollen. And these pollen, of course, has the gametes, which form between and can be spread across the branches, which can result into how they reproduce. They've also developed a sort of nectar in order to sort of reward the creature that they are spreading the stuff with, right? Which, of course, can result into various pollination between the species. Now, in order to attract pollinators, they have developed bright colors in order to attract them and such. The most eye-catching colors on Gura are the most eye-catching colors on Gura to stand out among purple is yellow and orange. They've developed this to attract pollinators. And it's pretty. However, they have some other types of colors they may also use. Of course, the main colors are orange and yellow. However, the other colors are green and red. Now, unlike most plants, which reproduce via spores and that's it, the spore blossom, which is the main top on the plant, will grow seeds. Well, this seed is a sort of nut. This nut grows out of the spore blossom, and multiple nuts grow out of the spore blossom. They have two main, like, little bulbs on it. And when you cut one open, you will find a sort of bean. These beans are inside of the nut, surrounded by the nut's thick flesh, which is mainly used to let the creatures that are eating the nuts sort of go after that more, but they will still also consume the beans. The beans are squishy and have a sort of waxy coating in order to survive the digestive tract of the species. Then they will grow out of the waste of the creature, and then grow into a new Pucllaria folium, which is very pretty. So, you have the first plants that have developed a sort of seed with nuts. Well, besides some of the aquatic plants, which have developed fruits. But these nuts will now thrive among these flowers. These Guran flowers, due to their sort of population, are only found on Mariterra and Longiterra, not on North Laura and Laura. And like I said, these vast colonies of these Cotinus purpuraris can form vast sort of plain-like biomes. And let's go ahead and cut straight towards these sort of first beginnings of the plains. These plains can also contain the purple heart lilies. some haven't evolved and still retain their sort of similar traits, can still grow here. And these plains are vast and purple. What are some creatures that live here? Now, these guys have evolved to fit the plains. They're already purple, so why not they adapt to it? This giant creature, the Unguinus graciosus, is a large predator with a large robust beak and large claws. These creatures had developed their claws similarly to some theropod dinosaurs like Velociraptor or maybe even Utahraptor with their long sickle claws. These large claws are used to pry open the flesh of creatures they kill, and even exoskeletons. Now, these creatures are fairly large, and to accumulate this, they've developed fiber muscles within their limbs, not hydraulics. So they don't walk around via hydraulics, they walk around via muscles. But still, this can't support all of their weight. So in order to support all of their weight, they may develop a sort of hollowish, tubish bone in their legs. This bone, it would be probably made out of calcium, and it can allow them to sort of walk around and support their heavy weight. So, these guys can get fairly large with their new bones in the legs and muscles that are not sort of hydraulic muscles. So yeah, we have these beautiful creatures, Unguinus graciosus. Now these guys are the Arminus turgrim. These guys are like an armadillo, and they have adapted to foil the plans of the Unguinus graciosus. By curling up into a ball, they can usually deflect the Unguinus graciosus attack. However, sometimes it's not destined to work, thus developing large, robust limbs in order to dig little pits they hide themselves in. Now, the Arminus turgrim are descended from the Duberostrium, and, like I said, they dig burrows and have thick beaks. Now, similar to the Unguinus graciosus, they have developed fiber muscles too to support their weight. Now, since they are a bit heavier than them because of their chitinous armor, they have also developed internalized bones made of calcium within their legs, except these are a bit more thick. And they're pretty much little Gura armadillos. Now, you can find these guys dotted across the plains of Mauriterra and Longoterra, curling up in balls when they're startled and scared. Now, these are all very beautiful creatures. What's some other creatures that live out in these plains? This guy. This is the Gracilis digitus. The Gracilis digitus is a very strange creature. Now, unlike their cousins, which have developed large, robust sickle claws, these guys have developed long, detritus fingers instead of large talon-like sickle claws. Similar to eyes, they use these long finger-like digit in order to drill into the wood of the Titania purpura and the Purpura arbora. They do this in order to extract small organisms that may be trying to feed on the wood. They also do it in order to get to some of the wood bark chips, which they also feed on, which is good. So these guys are sort of omnivores, because even though they might drill, they'll occasionally feed among small organisms and plants. This makes them small little omnivores that spend most of their time drilling in wood. These guys are also nocturnal, mainly coming out at night when predators are not near, so they can spend most of their time just drilling away. Now, unlike their cousins, which developed sort of little bones, they have not developed bones. However, they have developed fibrous muscles, not hydraulics. While some hydraulic species still do exist, they are relatively small. But they may diversify similarly to earth insects or other invertebrates. Now, these guys right here who are scavengers, mainly feeding on dead and decaying. In order to survive from predators that may very well be trying to eat them, they may adapt into this. This is Terra Rostrium. Terra Rostrium is basically Gura's equivalent of like a mole. These guys have developed robust forelimbs full of fiber muscles, which allows them to quickly dig and push soil. They also use their robust beak to push soil. So these guys are constantly digging. They have very poor eyesight and a very poor sense of hearing, but they can smell relatively good. So they mainly use their smell and touch for their main senses as they dig through the throwing ground. So these guys are basically very similar niche to moles, eating tubers and roots. And if they find any small worm-like creatures, they will indeed eat them, or any other creature that's small enough to fit in their mouth, as these guys are mainly omnivores. This big slab of creature may be something they feed on, or maybe something they run away from. This is Tubus vermis. The Tubus vermis is a very large tube grub. They resemble large beetle larvae or grubs. They move around in the dirt with their thick bodies, and they feed among roots and like fungal networks. They'll also feed on decaying bodies, so they're active creatures that feed among mostly anything, developing into large sizes. Similarly, they don't really have pronounced gills or lungs, but they mainly breathe through apertures near their skin. So they're similar to some types of salamanders which breathe through their skin, and they stay moist via the dirt and river like seeps through the dirt, so they can stay relatively moist. So if you dig in the dirt for long enough on Gura, you can find a Tubus vermis, which are quite abundant within Laura, North Laura, Maritera, and a wide diversity on Longaterra as well. So you can find these guys anywhere on the planet. Now back to these armored exoskeleton creatures. Now, they had book lungs, similar to Earth arthropods, so they couldn't get fairly large, but they can still have descendants too. What are they? Well, this is the Miltius corpora. The Miltius corpora has developed a large, robust exoskeleton around the very beginning part, and they have developed a little tail around there too. These creatures are very interesting sort of invertebrates. They are primarily sort of herbivores. However, they will scavenge off of carrion, but they won't really attack live organisms. They mainly feed among plants like the Cotyledus purpus or purple heart lilies, feeding on them. And of course, like their descendants, they still have book lungs, except their book lungs are a bit more pronounced and more equipped due to higher oxygen levels. They also see via 3 eyes, as most of their descendants will as well. And these arthropod-like creatures, which they're not really classified as arthropods as they are not from Earth, they are basically Gura's equivalent, and they will thrive in this hot, humid plains. So, these creatures, the Miltius corpora, have basically been evolving and thriving. So, what are some other descendants of other creatures? This is the Caudia ictidia. This creature has definitely pronounced the sort of tail aperture. This tail aperture is a very important little tail. Now, this tail has 4 glands. These 4 glands, you might be wondering, what are those 4 glands on the tips of their tails used for? It's used for producing a silk silk-like substance. This silk-like substance derived from their originally worm-like ancestors in order to keep their skin more moist and retain water. But now it has been hardened into a silk, similar to Earth spider silk. So they will find a nice suitable place to live, like at the roots of the Titania purpura, or Purpa arbora, or any other plant, or maybe just dig their own hole, and then they will stretch out webs. These webs, unlike many types of spiders which they use to hunt, these webs would not be very sticky, but instead will act sort of like a home, as they will be very strong and most predators won't be able to get in. So it's mainly used to certify their eggs and certify their homes. So these guys will definitely be living, should I say, among Gura. So these Cardia ictidia will be thriving. Now these beautiful creatures, the sharp mouths, will also have some descendants among these plants. What do I mean? I mean this guy. This is the Crus substitulium. I probably pronounced that wrong, but you know, too bad. This creature is very much so convergently evolved with an earth frog. Now, these creatures have developed their limbs into sort of apertures. The first 4 pairs of limbs have now become mainly little digits. These digits are used primarily in males for mating, but they can also be used for catching food, which is mainly what females use them for, as females don't need to hold on to anything while they mate. Now, then the last 2 pairs of limbs have developed into little things that allow them to turn like a frog turning. And the very back pair of limbs have developed into springs, allowing them to spring and hop like a frog. This has also resulted into a reduction in the tail to not increase drag. So these guys have basically developed into Guran frogs, and they thrive in the plains, especially when it's nice and wet out. Other than that, you can find them burrowing. Now, similar to frogs, they have to lay their eggs in water like amphibians and hatch out their larvae in there. So these guys are basically like Guran frogs, like I just said. And they are thriving in Longiterra and Mariterra. Of course, not yet in Laura and North Laura. And yes, we have these beautiful, beautiful creatures, and I will say it, they're one of my favorites, the Crus substitulium. I think I pronounced that right. Now, these guys will also have descendants, because I'm not going to leave out these big, dopey herbivores. Now, they basically just got larger. This larger morph is called the Megapidus. These large beasts roam the plains, feeding on many parts of plants, like the Cotis purpurus and purple heart lily, which is basically the only plants here, so they mainly also feed on them too. These creatures resemble the Japanese giant salamander in size and weight. And similarly to salamanders, they have to keep their skin wet. However, their skin is pretty rough and bumpy and wrinkly, somewhat similar to a toad. And this guy definitely takes this toad-like skin to extreme consequences. The Megapedis, well, they had toad-like skin. These guys also have toad-like skin. It's so they can hunt them. This is the Curians Bestia. The Curians Bestia is a large predator which also developed the toad-like skin in order to retain water, and they hunt them. Sort of similar to some sort of Cuban crocodiles, these guys have a semi-sprawled stance. Unlike the Megapodas, which have a sprawled stance like a lizard, these guys' semi-sprawled stance allows them to sort of gallop like a crocodile after their prey. And like I said, these guys have toad-like skin, and unlike toads, which are poisonous, well, in many types, these guys are not. Instead, they mainly use their toad-like skin to retain water, so they can venture out on the water more easily. These guys also have a very sharp hearing, allowing them to hear the footsteps of creatures like the Megapedis from far away. As the Megapedis also, forgot to mention this, they travel in herds. So these guys can hear them from miles away. And they also have a very keen sense of smell to track down their scents from urine or any other thing. I'm sorry, these guys don't have urines. These guys have all... I might actually make a whole episode on the reproductive system and waste system of these creatures. Yeah. Let me know if I should make a video about that. Another descendant of these beautiful creatures is the Macolius creaturea. The Macolius creaturea is a very beautiful creature. It is also a carnivore. Well, it's not really a carnivore, it's more of a mesocarnivore, as it also will feed on plants occasionally. And they've even developed a sharp tooth in order to stab prey and also dig up these roots and tubers. Now, similarly to like creatures like jaguars or cheetahs, these guys have also retained their toad-like skin, but have developed spots. These spots allow them to hide within the Codus parensis and purple heart lilies fields, allowing them to stalk prey. Similarly, they have a semi-sprawled stance, similar to the Curran's Bestia, which allows them to sort of gallop after they prey, which is almost entirely the Megapedis. So these guys are lethal predators, and they can feel vibrations in the ground a lot more efficiently than many creatures, mainly like the Curran's Bestia. So these guys are thriving in this new, hot, plain-like biome, which is going good. The plains are going relatively good for carnivores and, well, somewhat herbivores, as the Megapedis are thriving still because they're relatively large and can defend themselves in a herd. But still, some of them are going to die, so it's sort of evening out. Now, like I was saying, these plants right here, these plants, the Pulcheria folium, they need a pollinator. What other pollinator creature could there be? It's this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful creature. This is the Lapis armis. The Lapis armis is a gliding creature, developing some of their limbs into a gliding membrane, not unlike flying squirrels on Earth or sugar gliders. These guys, of course, do not have true powered flight. Instead, they mainly glide. They glide from Pulcheria folium to Pulcheria folium, gliding basically everywhere, collecting sap with their long tongue. However, doing this, they get pollen stuck to their legs and tail, which means it's going to spread to each flower and thus repairs the life cycle of the flowers. So these guys are very important to the ecosystem, and without them, most of the Pulcheria folium would not be able to exist. So thank these beautiful gliders, the Armis oris, for this. Wait, these guys are not the Armis oris. That's what's up next. So on the branches, there lies a creature known as the Armis oris. The Armis oris is a very creepy creature, if you're afraid of centipedes, that is, which I'm not really afraid of centipedes. These guys are active carnivores and have developed some of their legs into sharp mandibles. This allows them to cut through the squishy bodies and even exoskeletons of other creatures, making them relatively strong predators within the trees, like the Titania purpura or the Purpura arbora. Thriving. They've developed this like an exoskeleton color that mimics the coloration of the plants and like the plant's bark. So most creatures will not see them as they scuttle across with their three eyes searching for prey. So if you're a small animal that lives in the trees, this guy's a nightmare. I mean, just look at him. He's like a centipede, and he's pretty creepy. So, what exactly are these guys hunting for? Exactly. Well, this is definitely one of them. This is the Ligonium rostrum. The Ligonium rostrum has developed a taste for wood. These creatures have developed a sort of neotenous trait from their originally larval-like descendants. Their larval-like descendants, they still retain a tail, and they have developed thick muscles in their legs that also act like a pseudoskeleton, and developed a strong, sharp beak. Reason? These creatures are, well, they eat wood, and they eat wood in packs, similarly to termites. Although termites are eusocial, these guys are not eusocial. The Ligonium ostrum are not eusocial, but they are social. They live in small little packs, drilling into wood with their like sharp beaks and eating it, thus meaning they have a very complex digestive system to squeeze out the nutrients from the Titania purpurea or Purpura arbora's bark and wood. So, if you were to cut open a Purpura arbora or a Titania purpurea, you can probably find a vast pack of these guys in there. You can also find them in rotting trees and other plants. So they're a relatively common sight, found across Mauriterra and Longoterra, not yet Laura and North Laura. So yeah, these guys are relatively common, and you can find them pretty much anywhere in those locations. Now these guys, which is also what the descendant of the Ligonium rostrum. Now these guys have also developed a descendant. They are originally scattering and arboreal, liking to spend their time up in the trees. And they were sort of omnivores, feeding on plants and meat. Now, how can they get from tree to tree? The ground is too dangerous to go down, so why don't they do something different? How about they glide? This creature right here is the Lepus rostrum. The Lepus ostrum has developed also a gliding membrane, convergently evolving with the Lapis armis. Now the Lapis rostrum, which is different from the Lapis armis, have, well, of course, developed their gliding membrane, which of course is convergence with the Lapis armis. So these guys are like flying squirrels or sugar gliders. They have robust beaks, which allows them to crack the exoskeleton of prey, the leaves of trees, bark of trees, and pretty much whatever they feel like, as they are generalist omnivores, feeding on whatever they can find out here. Which is good. Now, these guys can actually stay on the air a bit longer than other creatures. Like, they can stay out there longer. Which, is good. They can stay out there longer than Lapis armis. So maybe these guys could be the first to develop powered flight. Oh, and also on convergence with other creatures, in order to make their powerful jumps and leaps, they've also developed fibrous muscles and calcium bones in their limbs. So, these guys have also developed internalized support structures within their limbs. Who knows what these guys could become in the future? Maybe flying beautiful creatures, or terrifying nightmares. Who knows, They mainly feed on also seeds. Seeds of the seeds of the Poecilia folium. So these guys are a major seed dispersal among them, as they can glide and crack open the nuts easier. So they're more likely to spread them, and thus are relatively good. Now, like I said, these guys sort of work together with the Lapis armis, which can pollinate it, and these guys eat the seeds, so they're vast dispersal among them. These guys will also occasionally eat them because they're already gliding near plants that they are eating from, so why not eat them too? I mean, they probably have a bit more nutrients. So you can find these guys gliding from tree to tree in these pocket forests, similarly to the lower guys of the Lapis armis. So the Lapis rostrum is most likely to thrive in these beautiful purple jungles. So we have the first gliding beaked creature and another gliding predator. But what are some other creatures that live up in the trees besides these guys? They can't be the only ones, right? Nope. This guy is also scuttling across branches of the Titania purpura and Purpura arbora. These creatures are the Arbora creatura. The Arbora creatura is basically a Guran lizard. They have also retained a sprawled stance as they scuttle across. And they mainly feed on creatures that they can mainly get their hands on, or jaws around, which are 3 parts. So they will feed on Lignium rostrum and even larval stages of Lapis rostrum. So they will feed on them too. So most creatures are not really safe from them, as they scuttle across and feed on pretty much anything. They'll even feed on leaves, so they're sort of mesocarnivores. And similarly to their descendants, they have retained scales, meaning that they do not have to go to the water to reproduce or really to drink, mainly drinking during rainfall. And similarly, containing their egg sacs and their little claws around the tips of the tail. And yes, it's very nice for these creatures, and similarly here with their antennae. So they're basically just a bigger scutum, which are their ancestors. Another descendant is hopping through the branches. This creature is the Gracilia rem. The Gracilia rem is a very lanky creature. This creature has to retain their sharp teeth and are carnivores, feeding on primarily meat from creatures like the Lignium rostrum and baby Lapis rostrum, and maybe even small Armis oris. They have developed a sort of backwards pair of limbs at the very bottom, which allows them to jump like a grasshopper through the branches and scale up it, which is very interesting. They can even use their tail, which is semi-prehensile, to sort of hold them in place as they scale across the branches. They may very well be the fastest creature in the branches, and also have a relatively exceptional hearing, allowing them to hear their distinctive calls from miles away through the trees. Take a listen to that. So they can hear from these vast distances and recall where they're at, which is nice for these guys. Now, this guy, which is also thriving here, is this beautiful, beautiful creature. This is the Mandibula unicornis. The Mandibula unicornis is, I'm pretty sure I was very bad at the name, but it's a pretty cool name. These guys have developed a prehensile trunk jaw and a prehensile tail, meaning that these guys are the fastest climbing creature, being able to climb up to 50 miles per hour. And with their strength in their tail and their trunk jaw, which is the correct term for Guran creature's jaw, which is trunk jaw, which means they can thrive and have developed the tooth into a hook. Now, okay, have you ever had a cat and you know how cats' claws come out of their paws? These claws go back into the paws via muscles pulling them back. These guys have a similar attribute, except it's in their trunk jaw, being able to recurl it and retract it back, similarly to a cat's claw. which makes these guys efficient climbers. These guys have also developed a purple color to blend in with the plants of the Titania purpura and purpurea. And they are omnivores that feed on pretty much anything they get their chunk jaw on. And yeah, now most of the scutum descendants live up in the trees, scuttling across. But these guys are not. A closely related descendant of the Mandibula unicornis is the Purpurus diamon. The Purpurus diamon is a large predator that also stalks the plains. Well, it's a sort of predator, as these guys are mainly omnivores, feeding on plants and meat. And similarly to their cousins that live up in the trees, they have developed a tooth on their trunk jaw. This is used to stab into the spine of prey, which can usually immobilize it, allowing them to feed on it. Now, terrifyingly, since these guys are basically the apex predators of the plains, and even will feed on other predators, because these guys have developed, well, of course, scales, and also because they can run fast, relatively running fast, about 19 miles per hour, which is fast for land species on Gura. They accumulate this because they don't have a semi-sprawled stance. They have an upright stance, similar to mammals. So they can probably chase down prey a lot faster than what you might realize, making them efficient predators, as well with a keen sense of smell, a keen eyesight, and a keen sense of hearing. They dominate Maritera and Longitera's Cotinus purpurus and purple heart lilies plains. I can't wait to see what their descendants are in the future. Who knows, Because I have a feeling they may become a sort of dominant life form. Who knows? So, yeah, these beautiful creatures are adapting and thriving through this. I'm so proud of them. Now, the Purpurus diamon is a very cool creature, and I would love to keep talking about him, but, they don't take care of their babies. They just lay the egg sac and then lay it down. The siblings are the ones who have to take care of themselves and help each other out until they reach adulthood, and then they don't care anymore. Which is basically true of all Scutum's descendants and the Scutums out there. Which is sad. But anyways, like I was saying, these creatures have been developing and evolving. But these guys have mainly been on land. Some descendants of the land creatures still retain a sort of a semi-aquatic or aquatic lifestyle. Because there, of course, are vast swamps and rivers and lakes here. So, what creatures live in those? We're not going to entirely go in there because we covered those in the last episode, but what are some creatures that still somewhat live there? This guy lives on the edge of swamp banks and river banks. The Fluminine creatura is a very, very strange creature. Now, they are a actually close descendant of the Megapithecus, which means that they should be herbivores. However, they are mesocarnivores. Now, when they're in their herbivore state, they resemble a manatee, very docile, feeding on plants, and it's beautiful. But when they're in their carnivore state, they're like a crocodile, and will wait for prey to come by drinking water or to lay their eggs in the water. Then they will jump out and grab them and drag them into the water and drown them. Once they've been drowned, or if the prey can't really be drowned, they will do a death roll, similar to an earth crocodile. And this death roll usually incapacitates the prey. Sometimes they'll even stick their antennae, which is their hearing structures, outward to see if they can hear if prey are coming near the riverbanks and see if they can locate them near the spot, and also use their keen sense of smell, which means they can smell underwater like a shark. So the Flumen creature is a very terrifying reminder of why you should stay away from riverbanks on Gura. And yeah, they're pretty. Now, we've mainly covered Mariterra and Longiterra. Now it's time to go to North Laura and just Laura to see what creatures have been adapting there. Now, similarly, the Cotis purpurus live there as well as the Kainakuria. I cannot pronounce that name anymore, I'm so sorry, but rewind the video to find it. They live there. But some of the purple heart lilies also live there and have been adapting and evolving. This is the Purpura trinis. The Purpura trinis is a very interesting type of plant, as they've also developed into a sort of trunk, stump-like plant. They've developed a woody structure similarly to the Titania purpura and Purpura arbora, so they have a wood. They also have sap. This sap is very sticky and sweet, similarly to syrup. They've developed long leaves at the very branch, and there are tiny little needles at the very end. These needles are actually the gametangia, in which they gather gametes and stuff like that in order to release spores. And these plants are basically Laura's and North Laura's trees. They're not very big, but they're the closest thing they have, so they're gonna have to deal with it. But they're still pretty cool looking, and with their nutritious sap, they're relatively cool. So, what other plants have been adapting and thriving on, like, Laura and North Laura, besides these Purpura trinis? This, right here. This plant is the Frutinus lutea. And you might be wondering, what is this? This is some crazy plant. And it's also descendant of the purple heart lily, but it's adapted. It is adapted into a fruit. That's right, there are fruits on Laura and North Laura. These fruits are pretty, with a bright yellow and orange color, with bright red bristles to attract herbivores or any other creature that might want to eat them. Once the creatures break open the hard shell, similar to a pumpkin or watermelon, they will be released with a sweet smell and a very sweet flesh that is very watery, like a watermelon, and very much coated in seeds. These seeds are quite pretty. And you might be wondering, how do these creatures even get, how do they, pollinate themselves? Well, they spread pollen through the wind, which is not as efficient, but they don't really have any pollinators. But they can still grow seeds via this way. Maybe some pollinators may adapt on Laura and North Laura. Who knows? But this is what they have so far. The seeds go through the digestive tract and will survive and grow into a new patch of Fructus luva. Now, I don't know if you would, but if I were on this planet, I would definitely eat these patches of fruit, which are very nutritious for herbivores, any other creature that wants to get a snack. And they're quite pretty fruits. I mean, just look at them. Now, what are some creatures that may be trying to eat these fruits? I mean, they have planes very similar to Longiterra and Mariterra, so what does North Laura and Laura have to offer? This is one of the creatures. This is the Corniparimus rostrum. This large, robust herbivore, similarly to its ancestors, has developed internalized, robust skeleton and an outer, hard, flexible shell. These guys, in order to survive, travel in herds. These herds mainly consisting of around 5 to 10 individuals, and they look for plants like purple heart lilies and patches of the Cotius purpus, which are everywhere because these are on like a purple plains. And they just feed off them, as well as fruits that they can find. Nothing else is really to say about them, except they're just a larger, more robust, descendant of their original ancestor, which I can't really think of the name right now because I am very tired. But you can find these guys roaming these plains, searching for food and searching for mates. Sometimes will even compete with each other by exhaling through their nostrils, making a large blowing sound before males fight to each other to assert dominance in the herd. Take a listen. But yeah, they do this loud blow through their exhaling to sort of try to assert dominance. And then they will fight by biting and stomping on each other. They usually don't result in death, but it could come to this if it gets too harsh, but it usually doesn't come to that. Now, if there are large grazers, there has to be predators, right? Well, no, of course not. Why would there have to be predators with grazers? I'm just kidding, there are predators. There are predators. I don't like predators. Well, actually, predators are good for the environment. Except for human predators. This is the Nophulia rostrum. The Nophulia rostrum is a very terrifying predator. They have developed thick, very swift feet, allowing them to chase their prey as they run up to 20 miles per hour. These guys have a stance similar to a theropod dinosaur and develop a long serrated beak, which allows them to sort of saw through flesh and even bone of their prey. Now, once they do this, they will just eat around. Partners, similar to many types of birds, will actually stay partners for life, which is sort of sweet, and will raise their grubs up together as they run across the fields. They have a very flexible spine, sort of, because it's on the outside of their body, their spine is, but they have internalized leg bones and chest bones and tail bones, so they're a bit strange. However, they are still thriving as the top predators on Laura and North Laura. I wonder what some of their descendants will look like in the future. Who knows? Now, that could be it for these strange beak creatures, but I'm not done. So we got this. This is the Gura rostrum. The Gura rostrum is a scampering little predator that resembles a bird. Sort of, except these guys cannot fly. But they scamper around with long legs similar to Roadrunner, which makes them the fastest creature that can run on land. About around 50 miles per hour, which is fast. And they're quick and skittish, and actually reproduce via, they have a lot of young, up to 20 offspring, and they do not have a parental care instinct. They leave them for dead. And the grubs will not look after each other. They will leave to go find their luck elsewhere. So, no parental care instincts. But they're still fast, right? And they're pretty interesting creatures, as they'll even form little chirps through exhaling very fast and closing up their breathing pipes. It's pretty cool. Take a listen to it. Males will do that in order to attract females during mating. And other than that, nothing much else is to say about them, except they're pretty cool. Now, I've covered basically all the creatures there is to cover, but I'm gonna give you one more creature, of course. This is the Stomachium vermis. The Stomachium vermis is a parasite, and it lives on Laura and North Laura and Mariterra and Longaterra in the intestines of many creatures. Now, these guys are like tapeworms, and that they have developed hooks on the base of their tail, which allows them to hook into the flesh of their host and feed off the particles of food passing through the intestines. And they similarly have light-sensitive patches, and they lay eggs to reproduce the cycle. These eggs, they don't need a partner to make these eggs. So most individuals are female and make sort of clones, similarly to many types of reptiles on Earth. So be careful for these alien parasites. I'm sure their descendants could lead into some gross things in the future. Who knows? And with that, this is the end of the land diversification episode. And I thank you guys a lot for watching, because it's relatively interesting. Well, because I got some pretty good plans for this project, and don't worry, Compola's episode 9 will come out hopefully soon. But like I said, we're having I'm on the road to around let's make it to around 60 subscribers. How about that? And also, guys, I'm not done, because I needed to discuss what the next episode will be about. What's the next episode? Well, we're going to leave the land temporarily to visit another cool biome. The cold, cold Arctic. See you next episode.